London, England, 1847. The morning light filtering through the tall windows of the Ashbury townhouse is cold. Not warm and golden like sunlight should be, but pale, distant, the kind of light that illuminates without offering warmth. In the grand bedchamber on the third floor, Crystal Ashbury wakes alone, though her husband stands less than 10 feet away. The Duke of Ashbury, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed even at this early hour, stands at the window with his back to her. His posture is rigid, his hands clasped behind him in that particular way men stand when they're trying to appear in control. The burgundy drapes frame him like a portrait of nobility. Cold, untouchable, perfect. Crystal's eyes open slowly. For just a moment, one fragile, foolish moment, she allows herself to hope that this morning will be different. That he'll turn, that he'll smile, that he'll cross the space between them and take her hand the way he did on their wedding day, back when she still believed promises made before God were promises meant to be kept. Welcome back to our channel, dear friends. Before we begin today's story, we want to pray that as you listen, God will meet you exactly where you are. May this story be a blessing to your heart, and may you receive your own testimony of His faithfulness. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and sharing these stories with someone. Now, let's continue. Crystal reaches toward him, her hand extending across the empty expanse of silk sheets. Her fingers tremble slightly, not from cold, though the room is chilly, from something worse, from knowing what's coming next. Edward. Her voice is soft, gentle, the kind of voice that carries prayer in its tone even when speaking a name. He doesn't turn. The silence that follows is thick enough to choke on. Crystal can feel her heartbeat in her throat, can feel the familiar tightness in her chest that comes from loving someone who refuses to be loved. She swallows hard and tries again. Edward, I thought perhaps we might take breakfast together this morning. I could have Mrs. Brennan prepare. I have appointments. His voice cuts through her words like a blade through silk. Smooth, clean, devastating. The solicitors arrive at 8:30. Parliament convenes at 11. I'll dine at my club this evening. He says this without turning, without looking at her, as if she's a servant reporting for duty rather than his wife waking in their shared bed. Crystal sits up slowly, drawing the covers around her shoulders. She's wearing a modest nightgown, white cotton with lace at the collar, nothing scandalous, nothing that would invite intimacy. She learned within the first month of their marriage that intimacy wasn't something he wanted from her. Not physical intimacy, not emotional intimacy, nothing that would require him to see her as more than the legal obligation she'd become. Of course, she keeps her voice steady, even though something inside her is cracking. Again, the way it cracks every morning when he leaves without looking at her. I hope your meetings go well. Now he turns. Finally. But there's no warmth in it. His face, handsome in that sharp, aristocratic way that makes women at society gatherings whisper behind their fans, is carefully blank. His dark eyes pass over her the way one might glance at furniture while leaving a room, noting its presence, feeling nothing about it. Crystal. Her name sounds wrong in his mouth. Formal. Distant. Like he's addressing a distant cousin rather than the woman who shares his name, his home, his life. I trust you'll occupy yourself appropriately today. Lady Whitmore mentioned you've been absent from several recent charity committees. There it is. The subtle criticism wrapped in concern. The implication that she's failing even at the few duties he allows her. Crystal's hands tighten on the bed covers. For just a moment, she considers explaining, telling him that she skipped Lady Whitmore's charity luncheon because it was the same day the orphanage near Whitechapel needed help with their sick children, that she chose scrubbing floors and holding fevered hands over discussing theoretical charity while eating imported pastries, that she finds more of God in the slums than in any drawing room conversation about the deserving poor. But she doesn't say any of this, because he wouldn't understand. And worse, he wouldn't care. I'll make amends with Lady Whitmore, she says instead. He nods. satisfied, then moves toward the door, his boots clicking against the polished wood floor with the sharp precision of a man who knows exactly where he's going and feels no need to look back. Crystal watches him reach for the door handle, watches him prepare to leave. Again, the way he leaves every morning. The way he's been leaving for the 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days they've been married. And before she can stop herself, before wisdom or self-preservation can silence her, she speaks. Edward, I pray for you. Every morning. Every night. He freezes. His hand on the door handle goes rigid. When he turns back, there's something in his expression she rarely sees. Not quite anger. Closer to irritation. The way one might look at a persistent child who keeps asking questions that have no good answers. Do not, he says quietly, and somehow the quietness makes it worse. Pray for me as though I am broken. Crystal meets his eyes, holds his gaze even though everything in her wants to look away. Her voice, when it comes, is still gentle, still kind, but there's steel underneath now. The kind of strength that comes from faith rather than pride. We are all broken, Your Grace. She uses his title deliberately, reminding him of the distance he insists on maintaining. That is why grace exists. For just a second, so brief she might have imagined it, something flickers across his face. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort, like she's touched something he's been trying very hard not to acknowledge. Then it's gone. The mask slides back into place. Cold, controlled, perfectly ducal. I'll return late, he says, and leaves. The door closes with a soft click that sounds like finality. Crystal sits in the massive bed, in the massive room, in the massive house that has never once felt like home, and closes her eyes. Not to cry. She's cried herself empty over the past months. Now she just prays. Her lips move silently, forming words she's spoken so many times they've worn grooves in her heart. Prayers for her husband's hardened heart. Prayers for wisdom to know how to love someone who doesn't want to be loved. Prayers for the strength to keep believing that God placed her in this marriage for a reason, even when that reason remains hidden in shadow. Below, in the grand entrance hall, the Duke of Ashbury retrieves his hat and gloves from a silent footman. His expression is unreadable. His movements are precise. Everything about him speaks of a man in complete control of his life, his household, his future. But as he steps out into the cold London morning, his jaw clenches. Just once. Just for a moment. He does not think about his wife's words. He refuses to think about them. But they follow him anyway, like whispers he can't quite silence. We are all broken. That is why grace exists. He walks faster, as if he can outpace the discomfort those words create. As if he can outrun the growing suspicion that maybe, just maybe, he's made a terrible mistake. Not in marrying her, in refusing to see her. The weeks that follow are a study in careful avoidance. The Duke and Duchess of Ashbury exist in the same house the way two ghosts might haunt separate rooms, aware of each other, never quite crossing paths. At society gatherings, they perform their roles with practiced precision. He offers his arm. She takes it with that gentle smile that makes certain older women whisper, "Such a sweet girl, what a pity." They stand together in receiving lines, their bodies angled in such a way that observers might call them a handsome couple if they didn't look too closely at the careful space maintained between them. Lady Pemberton hosts a dinner party on a Thursday evening. 16 guests arranged around a table that groans under the weight of imported delicacies. Crystal sits 5 places down from her husband, watching him charm Lady Hertford with stories from Parliament. His laugh is warm, genuine. The kind of laugh she's never heard directed at her. Your Grace, Lord Pemberton leans toward Crystal, his breath smelling of wine and too much cologne. I understand you've been quite active in charitable pursuits lately. The way he says active suggests something distasteful, like he's commenting on a peculiar hobby rather than genuine faith in action. Crystal keeps her smile gentle. I believe we're called to serve the least among us, Lord Pemberton. Scripture is quite clear on Yes, yes, Scripture. He waves a hand dismissively. But surely your first duty is to your household? Your husband? I imagine the Duke would prefer his wife at his side rather than in. Where was it? Whitechapel. The table grows quieter. Not silent, but quieter. That particular kind of quiet that means people are listening while pretending not to. Crystal glances toward Edward. Their eyes meet across the length of the table. For just a moment, she thinks, hopes, prays, that he might defend her. Might acknowledge that her faith, her service, her calling is valid even if it's unconventional. Edward looks away, returns his attention to Lady Hertford, says something that makes her laugh behind her fan. The message is clear. He will not defend her. He will not protect her from ridicule. She is on her own. Lord Pemberton smirks, satisfied, and returns to his pheasant. Crystal feels something crack inside her chest. Not her faith. Her faith remains solid as stone. But something else. Some last fragile hope that her husband might eventually see her. Might eventually choose her. She excuses herself between courses, claiming a headache that isn't entirely a lie. In the ladies' retiring room, she stands before the mirror and studies her reflection. Plain. That's what society calls her. Brown hair, brown eyes, average features that don't inspire poetry or passionate declarations. She's not beautiful like Lady Hertford with her curls and perfect complexion. She's just Crystal. Simple. Faithful. Invisible. She presses her hands against the marble sink and closes her eyes. Lord, she whispers, show me why I'm here. Show me what you're doing. Because I can't see it anymore. I'm trying to trust you, but it's so, her voice breaks. It's so hard to love someone who won't let himself be loved. A rustle of fabric behind her. Crystal's eyes snap open. Lady Catherine Harrow stands in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Forgive me, Lady Catherine says quietly. I didn't mean to intrude on your prayers. Crystal straightens, smoothing her skirts, trying to compose herself. It's quite all right. I was just wondering why God placed you in an impossible marriage. Lady Catherine's voice is surprisingly kind. She moves closer, her silk gown whispering against the floor. I've watched you these past months, Your Grace. Watched how he treats you. Watched how you bear it with such grace. She emphasizes the last word deliberately. Many women would have grown bitter or indiscreet. You've done neither. Crystal doesn't know what to say to that. Doesn't know if it's comfort or criticism. Lady Catherine places a gentle hand on Crystal's arm. I lost my own husband 3 years ago. Before he died, he was difficult, cruel even. I prayed for him daily, just as I suspect you pray for the Duke. And do you know what I learned? Crystal shakes her head. That sometimes God's greatest work happens in the darkness we cannot see. That sometimes, Lady Catherine's voice grows thick with emotion. Sometimes the prayers of a faithful wife break through stone walls that nothing else can penetrate. Don't lose hope, Your Grace. God has not forgotten you. The words settle over Crystal like a benediction, like a lifeline thrown into drowning waters. Thank you, she whispers. I thank you. They return to the dinner party together. But something has shifted in Crystal. Not her circumstances, not her husband, but her resolve. She will keep praying, keep believing, keep serving God, even when serving God means loving a man who doesn't want her love. Because that's what faith is. Not feeling, not certainty, just continuing to walk forward when everything in you wants to stop. Autumn descends on London with unusual ferocity. Cold rain lashes the streets. Fog rolls in from the Thames, thick and yellowish, making the city feel like something out of a fever dream. The Duke maintains his rigorous schedule: Parliament, clubs, business meetings, society obligations, moving through his days with the precision of a well-wound clock. Until the night his body betrays him. It happens at Lord Stratford's ball. A glittering affair with hundreds of guests, champagne flowing like water, an orchestra playing waltzes that echo through marble halls. The Duke of Ashbury is holding court near the refreshment table, surrounded by business associates and social climbers, discussing railway investments and colonial trade routes. He's mid-sentence when the world tilts sideways. The words die in his throat. His vision blurs at the edges, then narrows to a tunnel. Sound becomes muffled, distant, like he's underwater. His knees buckle. Someone screams. Multiple someones. Hands catch him before he hits the floor, but barely. He's aware of being lowered onto something soft, a settee. Maybe, aware of faces hovering above him, mouths moving, but he can't hear what they're saying because there's a roaring in his ears like rushing water. His chest feels like it's being crushed. His skin is simultaneously burning and freezing. He tries to speak, to reassure everyone that he's fine, that this is nothing, but his tongue won't cooperate. Somewhere in the chaos, someone shouts for a physician. And somewhere else, across the ballroom where she'd been sitting quietly with the older matrons, too plain and too pious to be included in the dancing, Crystal stands. She doesn't run. Ladies don't run. But she moves through the crowd with such focused intensity that people part before her without conscious thought. Her face is pale but composed. Her hands are steady. She reaches her husband's side and kneels beside him, right there on the ballroom floor, not caring about her gown or propriety or what anyone thinks, and takes his hand. Edward. Her voice cuts through his confusion like a blade through fog. Clear. Certain. Edward, can you hear me? His eyes find hers. For the first time in 8 months, he really looks at her. Not through her. Not past her. At her. And what he sees in her face isn't panic or fear or satisfaction at his weakness. It's fierce, protective love. I'm here, she says quietly, squeezing his hand. You're going to be all right. I'm here. He wants to tell her she shouldn't be. Wants to remind her that their marriage is a convenience, an obligation, nothing more. But he can't form the words. And her hand in his is the only solid thing in a world that's dissolving into darkness. The last thing he hears before consciousness slips away is her voice. Praying. The diagnosis comes swiftly and mercilessly. Fever of unknown origin, complicated by exhaustion and what the physicians delicately call constitutional weakness. Translation. The Duke has pushed himself to the breaking point, and his body is demanding payment. He's confined to bed. Not for days, for weeks, possibly months. The associates who filled his study with business matters disappear like smoke. Parliament colleagues send polite notes, but don't visit. Society, which thrives on strength and power and influence, turns its attention elsewhere. In the cruel arithmetic of London's elite, a sick duke is a useless duke. But Crystal remains. She converts the room adjacent to his bedchamber into a makeshift sick room, moves a chair beside his bed where she can sit during the worst of the fever spikes, learns to read his breathing, to know when delirium is approaching, to anticipate his needs before he can voice them. The Duke, in his lucid moments, is furious about this. You shouldn't. He struggles to sit up, fails, falls back against the pillows with a frustrated growl. You shouldn't be here. Mrs. Brennan can, any of the staff can. Mrs. Brennan has a household to run. Crystal says calmly, wringing out a cloth in cool water. And I'm your wife. Where else would I be? This isn't. He turns his head away, jaw clenched. This isn't what you signed up for. Crystal pauses, looks at him directly. Actually, Your Grace, it's exactly what I signed up for. In sickness and in health. Remember? He doesn't answer. Can't answer. Because she's right, and they both know it. The first week is the worst. Fever rages through him with such intensity that he barely knows where he is. He thrashes in the bed, tangling himself in sweat-soaked sheets. Calls out for people who aren't there. His father, dead these 10 years. His brother, dead longer. Once, deliriously, he reaches for Crystal and calls her mother. She doesn't correct him, just takes his hand and tells him gently that everything will be all right. When the fever breaks, temporarily, the physicians warn, it will return. He wakes to find her asleep in the chair beside his bed. Her head is tilted at an uncomfortable angle. Her hand rests on the edge of his mattress, fingers curled loosely as if she'd been holding his hand and simply couldn't maintain the grip while unconscious. There are dark circles under her eyes. Her hair, always so carefully arranged, has come partially loose from its pins. Her dress is rumpled. She looks exhausted. She looks beautiful. The thought startles him so much he nearly laughs. Except laughing hurts, and besides, it's absurd. Crystal isn't beautiful. Society decided that long ago. She's plain, simple, uninteresting. Except, she's here. When everyone else left, she stayed. When he pushed her away, she remained. When he gave her every reason to abandon him, she chose to sit in an uncomfortable chair and hold his hand through the worst of his fever. That's not nothing. That's not simple duty. That's something else entirely. Your Grace. Mrs. Brennan appears in the doorway, moving quietly. You're awake. Shall I let her sleep? He hears himself say. His voice is rough from disuse, barely above a whisper. She let her rest. Mrs. Brennan's expression softens in a way he's never seen before, like she's witnessing something she's been hoping to see for months. Of course, Your Grace. She retreats as quietly as she came. The Duke lies in his sickbed and watches his wife sleep. Outside, rain patters against the windows. The fire in the grate crackles softly. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimes the hour. And for the first time since he married her, he wonders what it might be like to actually know Crystal. Not the quiet, praying, dutiful wife who haunts the edges of his life, but the woman underneath. The woman who chooses to sit vigil when she could justifiably leave him to the servants. The woman whose prayers he's dismissed, but whose presence has become the one constant in his unraveling world. Crystal stirs. Her eyes open slowly, blinking against the dim lamplight. When she sees him watching her, she sits up quickly, wincing at the stiffness in her neck. Edward, you're awake. How do you feel? Do you need water? The physician left instructions for. Why? The word comes out before he can stop it. She pauses. Why what? Why are you here? He searches her face, genuinely confused. I haven't been kind to you. I've ignored you, dismissed you, made no secret that our marriage is. He can't finish. Can't say a mistake out loud, even though they both know it's what he's thought from the beginning. Crystal doesn't look away, doesn't flinch, because when I made vows before God, I meant them. All of them, even the ones about sickness. She reaches for the water pitcher, pours a glass with steady hands. And because someone has to pray for you, Edward, and it seems I'm the only one willing to do it. He should be offended, should feel patronized, should feel a dozen different negative things. Instead, he feels something crack, something he's been holding rigid for so long he'd forgotten it was there. I don't deserve your prayers, he whispers. Crystal helps him drink, then sets the glass aside. When she looks at him again, her expression is impossibly gentle. Grace isn't about deserving. It never has been. That's why it's called grace. The words hit him like a physical blow. He closes his eyes, suddenly exhausted again. But this time the exhaustion isn't just physical. It's something deeper, something he doesn't have a name for. Rest, Crystal says softly. I'll be here. And God help him, he believes her. The days blur together. Morning light, afternoon shadows, evening darkness. The cycle repeats with the relentless rhythm of a tide. And through it all, Crystal remains. She reads to him when the silence becomes oppressive. Not society gossip or political treatises, but scripture. Psalms mostly. Sometimes the Gospels. Her voice is quiet, but clear, and he finds himself listening not just to the words, but to the way she reads them. Like they mean something. Like they're not just ancient texts, but living truth. Once, during a particularly difficult night, when the fever returns with a vengeance, and he's shaking so hard his teeth rattle, she sings. Hymns. Old ones he remembers from childhood Sundays, back before his father died, and church became another obligation to be endured rather than embraced. Her voice isn't particularly trained, but it's true. And there's something about hearing those familiar words, amazing grace, how sweet the sound, that makes his chest ache in a way that has nothing to do with physical illness. Where did you learn that? He asks when the song ends, his voice hoarse. My mother. Crystal adjusts the blankets around him with practiced efficiency. She sang it every night before bed. Said it was a reminder that no matter how dark things seemed, grace was always there. Always sufficient. Was she like you? He doesn't know why he's asking. Doesn't know why he suddenly wants to know more about this woman he's ignored for 8 months. Crystal smiles, but there's sadness in it. She was better than me. Stronger. More patient. She passed when I was 17. Pneumonia. Even at the end, even when she could barely breathe, she was thanking God for his goodness. I've tried to live the way she did. To see grace even in difficult places. Edward stares at her. You lost your mother at 17. Yes. And your father. I remember the contract mentioned he'd passed as well. 3 years ago. Heart failure. Crystal's hands still on the blanket. I was alone for 2 years before the arrangement that brought me here. Alone. He's never thought about this. Never considered what her life was like before she became the Duchess of Ashbury. What did you do? Survive. She says it simply. Worked as a governess for a family in Yorkshire. The Hendersons. Good people. They attended the same church I did, and when they heard about the marriage opportunity, they encouraged me to consider it. Said it was a chance for security. For a home. Edward feels something twist in his chest. And instead you got me. Crystal meets his eyes. Instead I got a man who needed prayer more than he needed a wife. Perhaps that's exactly what God intended. Before he can respond, before he can figure out how to respond to that, another wave of fever crashes over him. He's vaguely aware of Crystal calling for Mrs. Brennan, of cool cloths being placed on his forehead, of gentle hands holding him steady when the shaking gets too violent. And through it all, that voice. Praying. Always praying. 3 weeks into his illness, the Duke receives an unexpected visitor. Lord Hastings. His business partner. The man with whom he's been building a railway investment scheme that could triple their fortunes. The man who hasn't written a single letter since news of the Duke's illness spread through London like wildfire. Crystal shows him into the sitting room. Edward is well enough now to leave his bed for a few hours each day, though he tires quickly. He's dressed, at least, though the clothes hang looser on his frame than they should. Weight he can't afford to lose. Hastings. Edward rises to greet him, ignoring the way the room tilts slightly. This is unexpected. Yes, well, Hastings doesn't quite meet his eyes. Had to come eventually, didn't I? Matters to discuss. Business matters. They sit. Crystal offers tea, which Hastings accepts with barely a glance in her direction. Edward notices this. Notices the way Hastings dismisses his wife the same way he himself has dismissed her for months. It leaves a sour taste in his mouth. The railway investment. Hastings begins without preamble. I'm afraid I'll need to withdraw. Edward goes very still. Withdraw. Yes. You understand. Your illness has created complications. Investors are nervous. Questions about leadership, continuity, that sort of thing. I'm sure you understand. I see. Edward's voice is carefully neutral. And the contracts we signed? The agreements. Ah, yes, well, Hastings shifts uncomfortably. My solicitors have found certain provisions. Clauses regarding partner incapacity. Nothing personal, you understand. Just business. Just business. The words his life has been built on. The philosophy he's used to justify every cold decision, every ruthless move. Just business. Nothing personal. It's amazing how hollow those words sound when you're the one being abandoned. Of course. Edward keeps his expression blank. Just business. Hastings stands, clearly eager to leave. I'm sure you'll recover fully. Absolutely sure of it. And when you do, well, we can discuss future opportunities. But for now, you're protecting your interests. Edward doesn't stand. Can't afford to stand and risk showing weakness. I understand completely, Hastings. I would do the same. The terrible thing is, it's true. He would do the same. Has done the same. In fact, to other business partners who showed vulnerability. He remembers justifying it exactly the way Hastings is justifying it now. Nothing personal. Just business. After Hastings leaves, Edward sits in the sitting room as the afternoon light fades. Crystal enters quietly, moving to light the lamps. He abandoned you, she says simply. No judgment in her voice. Just observation. Yes. Will others? Probably. Edward leans his head back against the chair, suddenly exhausted again. That's how the world works, Crystal. You can't show weakness. The moment you do, they circle like vultures. Crystal finishes lighting the lamps. Comes to sit across from him, her hands folded in her lap. Is that why you've kept me at such distance? Because you see kindness as weakness? The question lands like a blow. He wants to deny it. Wants to deflect. But he's too tired for deflection. Yes, he admits. Affection it's a liability. A vulnerability others can exploit. My father taught me that. Taught me that love makes men weak. Makes them targets. Your father was wrong. Edward's eyes snapped to hers. Excuse me. Your father was wrong. Crystal's voice is gentle but firm. Love doesn't make us weak. Love makes us human. And being human, being vulnerable, that's not something to be afraid of. It's something to be embraced. Easy for you to say. You have nothing to lose. Don't I? Her eyes hold his steadily. I've spent 8 months loving a man who won't look at me, who won't speak to me, who treats me like a piece of furniture he regrets purchasing. If that's not vulnerability, Edward, I don't know what is. The words hit him harder than any physical blow. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. He stops, starts over. I never meant to be cruel. I know. And the terrible thing is, she sounds like she means it. You were protecting yourself. I understand that. But Edward, she leans forward slightly. You can't protect yourself into happiness. You can't isolate yourself into peace. At some point, you have to decide, is safety worth the cost of being truly alone? Before he can answer, she rises. You should rest. You've had enough visitors for one day. She leaves him sitting there as twilight deepens into night. Leaves him with questions he doesn't know how to answer and truths he's not sure he's ready to face. Outside, London continues its relentless rhythm. Carriages rattle past. Church bells mark the hours. Life goes on, indifferent to individual suffering or revelation. But in the Ashbury townhouse, something is shifting. Slowly, painfully, like ice beginning to crack after a long winter. And the Duke, alone in his sitting room, presses his hands against his face and wonders when exactly he stopped being the man in control of his life and became the man desperately trying to hold together a life that's crumbling around him. The letter arrives on a Tuesday morning in early November. Crystal is in the small study off the main library, a room she's claimed as her own because Edward never uses it when Mrs. Brennan brings it to her. The envelope is thick, expensive paper, sealed with wax that bears an unfamiliar mark. Came by special courier, Your Grace, Mrs. Brennan says. Said it was urgent. Crystal breaks the seal with fingers that want to tremble, but don't. Reads the contents once. Then again, because surely she's misunderstood. But no, the words remain the same on the second reading. The letter is from Reverend Thomas Whitfield, leader of a missionary society working in the slums of East London. They've heard of her charitable work, her dedication to serving the poor, her unwavering faith in difficult circumstances. And they have a proposition. They're expanding their mission, opening a new facility in Whitechapel specifically for women and children. They need someone to oversee it. Someone with organizational skills, compassion, and most importantly, genuine faith. Someone who won't just administer charity, but will live it. They're offering her the position. It would be full-time. She would need to be present daily, often staying late into the evenings. She would have a small office, a stipend, and the opportunity to make a real difference in lives that society has forgotten. The letter ends with a simple question. Will you come? Crystal sets the letter down with shaking hands, stares at it like it might bite her. This is what she's prayed for. Not escape from her marriage. She would never ask God for that. But purpose. Meaning. A way to use her gifts for something that matters. A calling. But accepting would mean what? Leaving the house more. Being absent during Edward's continued recovery. Choosing ministry over wifely duty. Choosing herself over him. Except it's not about choosing herself. It's about following where God leads. And God seems to be leading her toward this opportunity with such clarity it takes her breath away. She folds the letter carefully, tucks it into her pocket, doesn't mention it at dinner that night. Edward is still eating in his room most evenings, too weak for the formal dining room. Doesn't mention it the next day either, while she sits with him during his afternoon rest, reading from the Psalms as has become their routine. But that night, alone in her room, she kneels beside her bed and prays. Lord, I don't understand. I've been asking you to show me why I'm here. Asking you to give me purpose beyond being ignored. And now you open this door, and I don't know if I should walk through it. Is this you calling me forward? Or is this a test of my commitment to the vows I made? She prays for hours, until her knees ache and the candle burns low, until the house around her grows silent with sleep, until the only sound is her own breathing and the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hall below. And finally, in the stillness, she feels it. Not an audible voice, not a burning bush or divine proclamation, just a quiet, unshakable certainty settling into her bones. Ask him. The thought comes so clearly it might as well have been spoken aloud. Don't decide alone. Ask him. Let him choose. Crystal opens her eyes, stares at the shadows dancing on her ceiling. But what if he says no? What if he? Ask him. Trust me with the answer. She climbs into bed without undressing, too exhausted for propriety. Lies there staring at nothing until sleep finally claims her. Tomorrow. She'll ask him tomorrow. The Duke is in his study when Crystal finds him the next afternoon. He's going through correspondence, piles of it that have accumulated during his illness, sorting it into stacks with movements that are still too slow, too careful. He tires easily, but he's improving. The physicians say another month, maybe two, and he should be mostly recovered. Edward. She stands in the doorway, the letter folded in her pocket, her heart beating so hard she's sure he can hear it. May I speak with you? He looks up. Something in her expression makes him set down the papers immediately. Of course. Come in. Sit. She does. Perches on the edge of the chair across from his desk, hands clasped in her lap. I've received a letter. An opportunity. She pulls the envelope from her pocket, sets it on his desk. The East London Missionary Society. They're opening a new facility for women and children in Whitechapel. They've asked me to oversee it. Edward picks up the letter, reads it slowly. His expression is unreadable. This is full-time, he says finally. Daily commitment. Late evenings. Yes. It's not exactly suitable work for a duchess. No. Crystal keeps her voice steady. It's not. It's also everything I've ever wanted to do. Everything I believe God has been preparing me for. He sets the letter down, looks at her directly. And you want my permission? She stops. Starts over. I want to know what you think. We're married. This decision affects you too. I won't make it without at least asking. For a long moment, he doesn't speak. Just looks at her with those dark eyes that have seen her but never really looked at her until the illness forced proximity. Why? He asks finally. Why what? Why ask my opinion? I've given you no reason to value it. He stops. Swallows. I've been terrible to you, Crystal. 8 months of coldness. Dismissal. I wouldn't blame you if you took this opportunity and never looked back. So why are you asking me? Crystal's throat tightens. Because when I made vows before God, I meant them. All of them. Even the ones about forsaking all others. I can't. I won't make major life decisions without at least giving you the chance to be part of them. Even if you don't want to be. Edward stands abruptly. walks to the window, stands there with his back to her, shoulders rigid. When he speaks, his voice is rough. I overheard you. Last night. Praying. Crystal goes very still. I didn't mean for. I couldn't sleep. Was walking the hallway. Your door was slightly open and He turns to face her. You were asking God if this was a test. If he was testing your commitment to me. She wants to look away. Can't. Yes. And what did he tell you? To ask you. To let you choose. Edward's laugh is bitter. Of course he did. Put the decision on me. Make me the villain either way. That's not. Isn't it? He moves toward her, and there's something wild in his eyes. Something desperate. If I say yes, I lose you. You'll be in Whitechapel all hours, giving yourself to people who need you while I sit here in this house, knowing I had my chance and threw it away. If I say no, I'm the tyrant husband keeping his wife from her calling. I'm the man who chooses selfishness over her happiness. Either way, I lose. Crystal stands, crosses the space between them, looks up at him. He's taller than her, broader, but right now he looks more vulnerable than she's ever seen him. You could choose differently, she says quietly. How? You could let me go knowing I'll come back. You could trust that ministry doesn't mean abandonment. You could. She takes a shaky breath. You could be my partner in this instead of my obstacle. Support what I'm called to do instead of resenting it. I don't know how to do that. The admission sounds like it costs him something. I don't know how to be that. To be a man who doesn't control everything. Then learn. Crystal places a hand on his chest, right over his heart. We've spent 8 months as strangers in the same house. Maybe this is God's way of saying it's time to try something different. Maybe. Her voice breaks slightly. Maybe this is how we save this marriage. By being honest about what we need instead of pretending we need nothing. Edward's hand comes up to cover hers. His palm is warm. His fingers shake slightly. I'm afraid, he whispers. I'm afraid if you leave, even for good reasons, you'll realize how much better life is without me in it. And I'm afraid, he stops, forces himself to continue. I'm afraid I've already lost you, and I'm too late to get you back. Tears well in Crystal's eyes. Edward, I was wrong. The words come out rushed, desperate. About everything. About thinking love was weakness. About believing isolation was safety. About treating you like you were invisible when you were the only real thing in my life. I was so wrong. And his voice breaks. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can fix it. But I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. To be different. To be the kind of man who deserves a woman like you. Even though I know I don't and probably never will. Crystal is crying now. Full tears that streak down her face unchecked. You don't have to deserve grace, remember? That's why it's called grace. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you have me anyway. She squeezes the hand covering hers. The question is, what are you going to do with that? Keep pushing me away because you're afraid? Or finally let me in? The silence that follows is thick with possibility, with the weight of choices that will determine everything that comes next. Finally, Edward speaks. His voice is barely above a whisper. Take the position. Crystal's breath catches. What? Take it. The missionary society. The work in Whitechapel. Take it. He meets her eyes, and there's something raw and honest in his expression. Not because I'm giving you permission, you don't need my permission. But because I want you to know I see you. I see what you're called to do, and I want to support it. Even if I don't fully understand it. Even if it terrifies me. Edward. But come back. His hand tightens on hers. At the end of the day, come back. Let me be here when you return. Let me try to be worth coming back to. Crystal surges forward and wraps her arms around him. The embrace catches him off guard. She feels him stiffen in surprise, but then his arms come around her too. Tentatively. Like he's not sure he has the right. Like he's afraid she'll push him away. She doesn't push him away. They stand in his study, holding each other, while outside the November rain begins to fall. It's not a romantic embrace. It's too desperate for that. Too much like two drowning people clinging to each other in rough water. But it's real. And right now, real is more valuable than romantic. I'll come back, Crystal whispers against his chest. Every night. I promise. I'll be here. Edward's voice is rough. Learning how to be the kind of man who makes you want to. They don't kiss. This isn't that kind of moment. This is something deeper. Something more foundational. This is two people who married as strangers finally choosing to become partners. It's a beginning, not an ending, not even a middle. Just the first real step towards something neither of them planned, but both of them desperately need. Outside, the rain intensifies. Thunder rumbles in the distance. The storm that's been threatening all day finally breaks. And inside the Ashbury townhouse, two hearts that have been living in separate prisons start, slowly, carefully, to open their doors. The months that follow are not easy. Transformation never is. Crystal begins her work at the Whitechapel mission, and it's everything she hoped for and harder than she imagined. The poverty is crushing. The need is endless. Women arrive with bruises they won't explain. Children come with eyes too old for their faces. And Crystal gives everything she has, her time, her energy, her compassion, until she comes home each night utterly exhausted. But she comes home. That's the important part. Every evening, no matter how late, no matter how tired, she returns to the townhouse. To Edward. And he's there, waiting, learning how to ask about her day, learning how to listen without trying to fix everything, learning how to be present without controlling. It's awkward at first. They've spent so long as polite strangers that genuine intimacy feels foreign. They stumble through conversations, misunderstand each other, have moments of frustration where old patterns threaten to resurface. But they keep trying. Edward starts attending church with her. Not because he's suddenly converted. Faith doesn't work that way. But because he's trying to understand. Trying to see what she sees. The first Sunday, he sits rigid in the pew, clearly uncomfortable. But he stays for the entire service. And the next week, he comes again. I don't understand it yet. He admits one evening over dinner. They eat together now, most nights. The faith thing. The prayer. The certainty that God is working even when circumstances are terrible. That's all right. Crystal reaches across the table, takes his hand. Faith isn't something you understand. It's something you experience. Give it time. Do I have time? He asks it quietly. I'm 34, Crystal. I've spent most of my life believing only in what I can control, what I can see and measure and manipulate. Asking me to believe in something beyond that is terrifying. Yes. Good. She squeezes his hand. That means you're taking it seriously. Easy faith isn't real faith. Real faith costs something. They talk like this now. Deep conversations that stretch late into the night. Conversations about God and doubt and fear and hope. About what it means to be married. About whether they can ever truly overcome the broken foundation their relationship was built on. And slowly, so slowly neither of them notices it happening until it's already happened, they fall in love. Not the passionate, dramatic love, but something deeper, quieter, more solid. The kind of love that's built on choosing each other every day, on forgiving each other's mistakes, on showing up even when it's hard. Edward starts joining her at the mission sometimes. At first, he's stiff and uncomfortable, clearly out of place among the poverty and desperation. But he sees how the women and children respond to Crystal. Sees the way she speaks to them, not with pity but with dignity. How she treats them as equals. How her faith is expressed not in words but in action. And something in him shifts. One evening, he finds himself praying. Not formally. Not with eloquent words. Just a simple, desperate whisper while watching Crystal hold a crying child whose mother just died. God, if you're there, help me understand. Help me see what she sees. Help me, he stops. Swallows. Help me be better. Please. It's not a dramatic conversion. There's no lightning bolt. No burning bush. Just a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, there's something beyond his own strength. Something beyond his ability to control and manipulate. Maybe there's grace. December brings snow. Rare for London. But this year it falls thick and heavy, transforming the dirty city into something almost magical. The mission in Whitechapel becomes even more crucial. People are freezing, starving, dying. Crystal works 18-hour days, comes home exhausted, smelling of coal smoke and poverty. Edward waits up for her every night, has tea ready, listens to her describe the heartbreaking situations she's encountered. And then, tentatively, awkwardly, he prays with her. "I still don't know what I'm doing," he admits one night after stumbling through a prayer that felt clumsy and insufficient. "I don't have the words you have." God doesn't need eloquent words. Crystal is curled against his side on the sofa in his study. Their study, now? They've started calling it ours instead of his and hers. He just needs honesty. "You're doing fine." "Am I?" Edward looks down at her. "Because it feels like I'm failing at everything. The business ventures still haven't recovered. Society still whispers about my illness. And I'm trying to be a man of faith when I'm not even sure what that means. It means you keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep choosing love over fear." She sits up, takes his face in her hands. "Edward, you've changed so much these past months. Don't you see that? The man you were when we married would never pray with me, would never ask about my day, would never admit weakness. The fact that you're even trying means you're already different. Not different enough." His voice is rough. "I still struggle. Still want to control everything. Still have moments where I resent your mission work because it takes you away from me. That's called being human." She kisses him gently. Grace doesn't mean perfection. It means receiving love even in our imperfection. You're allowed to struggle, Edward. You're allowed to have doubts. What matters is that you don't let those doubts drive you back into isolation. They kiss again, deeper this time. It's not their first kiss. That happened weeks ago, tentative and uncertain. But it's still new enough to feel precious. Still fragile enough to be sacred. When they part, Edward rests his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispers. "I don't know when it happened. Sometime between you nursing me through fever and forcing me to examine my own heart. Sometime between prayers I didn't understand and conversations that terrified me. But I love you. Desperately. Completely." Crystal's eyes fill with tears. "I've loved you since the beginning. Even when you were cruel. Even when you pushed me away. I couldn't help it. I kept praying that God would either take the love away or change your heart enough to receive it." She smiles through her tears. "I'm glad he chose the second option." "So am I." Edward pulls her close. "So am I." Outside, snow continues to fall. Inside, in the warm study with firelight dancing on the walls, two people who married as strangers hold each other like they never want to let go. This is what redemption looks like. Two broken people allowing God to work in the space between them, allowing grace to do what their own strength never could, healing what seemed beyond repair, building love where there was only obligation, creating a marriage that honors not just the vows they spoke, but the God who witnessed them. Spring arrives with characteristic English unpredictability, one day cold and gray, the next bursting with unexpected sunshine. The mission in Whitechapel continues its work. The city continues its relentless rhythm. And the Duke and Duchess of Ashbury continue learning how to be truly married. They're not perfect. They still have arguments. Still have moments of misunderstanding. But now they talk through them instead of retreating into silence. Now they pray together when conflicts feel insurmountable. Now they choose reconciliation over pride. Edward's business ventures slowly recover. Not because of manipulation or ruthless dealing, but because he's changed his approach. He treats partners with honor, conducts dealings with integrity, and surprisingly, people respond to this. Trust him more, want to work with him. His faith grows too. He starts reading scripture on his own, asks questions during their evening conversations, begins to see God's hand in circumstances he would have previously attributed to luck or strategy. One Sunday morning, during the service at their church, the minister speaks about redemption, about how God specializes in taking broken things and making them beautiful, how he works in ways we can't see or understand to accomplish purposes that seem impossible. Edward reaches for Crystal's hand during this sermon, holds it tightly, and when she glances at him, she sees tears streaming down his face. After the service, they walk home through the spring sunshine. Neither speaks for a long time. Finally, Edward breaks the silence. "I was wrong about everything." His voice is thick with emotion. "When I married you, I thought I was making a mistake. I thought you were a liability, something to be managed and controlled. I couldn't have been more wrong." "Edward, no, let me finish." He stops walking, turns to face her. Right there on the street, not caring who might see. "You saved me, not just from illness, from myself, from a life that looked successful but felt empty, from believing that control was the same as peace. You loved me when I was unlovable, prayed for me when I mocked prayer, stayed when everyone else left." His voice breaks. "You showed me what grace looks like, and in doing that, you showed me who God is." Crystal is crying now. "You changed too. You could have remained bitter, could have rejected everything I believe, could have forced me to choose between my calling and our marriage. But you didn't. You chose to grow, to change, to become the kind of man who makes me grateful I stayed." They embrace right there on the street. Let passersby stare. Let society gossip. None of it matters anymore. What matters is this: two people who were drowning separately have learned to swim together. That evening, they host their first dinner party as a genuinely united couple. It's small, just a few close friends, people who stood by them through the difficult months. Lady Catherine Harrow is there, the woman who encouraged Crystal during her darkest moment. Reverend Whitfield from the mission. A few business associates who remained loyal during Edward's illness. After dinner, as they gather in the drawing room, someone asks Edward about his recovery, about the business, about the future. Edward glances at Crystal, sitting beside him on the sofa, her hand in his, smiles in a way that transforms his entire face. "I was dying," he says simply, "not just from illness, from emptiness, from believing that success meant controlling everything and trusting no one. I was dying, and I didn't even know it." He squeezes Crystal's hand. "But God had other plans. He sent me a wife I didn't want. Let me get sick enough to need her. Broke me down until I was willing to admit I couldn't fix myself." He pauses. "And then he rebuilt me, not into the man I was, but into the man I was supposed to be all along." The room is quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when truth is spoken plainly. Lady Catherine breaks the silence. "That's what God does. He takes our mistakes, our pride, our brokenness, and redeems them. Makes them part of a story bigger than we could have written ourselves." "Yes." Edward's voice is firm. "Certain. That's exactly what God does." The final scene comes on a Sunday morning in late spring. The Duke and Duchess of Ashbury walk to church together, not riding in their carriage, not maintaining the careful distance society expects, just walking, hand in hand, like any married couple who genuinely enjoys each other's company. Sunlight streams through new leaves on the trees lining the street. Birds sing with the enthusiasm of warm weather. The city is waking up, and there's hope in the air. Inside the church, they sit together in their usual pew. But something is different today. Edward's Bible is worn now, pages marked, spine creased from use. When the congregation sings hymns, his voice joins in. Not perfectly, not with any particular skill, but with sincerity. During the sermon, Crystal rests her hand on his knee. He covers it with his own. The gesture is simple, intimate, the kind of touch that speaks of comfort and belonging. After the service, they stay to talk with other parishioners. Edward no longer stands aloof and distant. He engages, asks questions, shares struggles, has become part of the community rather than hovering above it. As they walk home, Crystal looks up at him. "Do you remember what you said to me that first morning? When I tried to pray for you, that you shouldn't pray for me like I was broken." Edward's expression is rueful. "I was such a fool. We're all broken. That's why grace exists." She repeats the words she spoke that day. "Do you believe that now?" Edward stops walking, turns to face her fully, takes both her hands in his. I believe that God took the biggest mistake I thought I'd made, marrying you, and turned it into the greatest blessing of my life. I believe he used my own pride to bring me to a place where I'd be forced to see what really matters. I believe his voice grows thick. I believe he loved me enough to break me so he could rebuild me. Yes, Crystal, I believe. She rises on her toes, kisses him gently. When they part, both are smiling. They continue walking home, not to a house, to a home, a place filled with love and faith and genuine partnership. A place that stands as testimony to what God can do when broken people surrender their pride and allow him to work. They entered marriage as strangers bound by contract. They emerged as partners bound by love. They began in pride and isolation. They found each other in humility and surrender. Faithful work of God taking broken things and making them beautiful. Just grace. Always grace. Sufficient grace. Dear friends, as we close this story, I want to pray for you. Wherever you are right now, whatever marriage or relationship you're navigating, whatever brokenness you're carrying, God sees you. He hasn't forgotten you, and he specializes in redemption that seems impossible. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for being the God of second chances. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we've given up on ourselves. For anyone listening who feels trapped in a loveless marriage, Lord, bring hope. For anyone who's struggling to forgive or be forgiven, bring grace. For anyone who feels like they've made irreparable mistakes, remind them that nothing is beyond your power to redeem. Lord, make them testimonies of your faithfulness. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for listening today. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you.